Welcome to Mindsprout. Today, we are diving into the biography of George Peele. Now, he's a name you might not know, but trust me, he is one of the most important English playwrights out there. A man whose work, and let's be honest, his pretty wild life story, directly set the stage for the titan who would follow, William Shakespeare. So, to really get this story, we've got to ask a big question. I mean, we all know Shakespeare, right? But who laid the groundwork? Who was it that turned London's theater scene from, a kind of crude pastime into a professional art form that could produce absolute masterpieces?
Well, the answer, it turns out, lies with a groundbreaking group of writers who just changed everything. These weren't aristocrats writing for a hobby. No, they were London's very first professional class of authors, and they were writing to make a living.
They were called the University Wits, and, this wasn't some official club with a secret handshake. It was more of a loose circle of brilliant, ambitious, and often pretty reckless young men. We're talking figures like Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, and of course, our guy, George Peele. They all had these elite educations and saw a huge opportunity in London's booming entertainment scene.
And what's so cool about these guys is the shift they represent. They took the really formal, academic kind of drama they learned at university and mashed it up with the rowdy, popular tastes of the London crowds. They basically created a brand new kind of theater, one that was both super smart and wildly entertaining.
So, right in the middle of all this new theatrical energy, you've got George Peele, an Oxford man, and he quickly makes his mark with a play that was part mythology, part courtly spectacle, and honestly, a brilliant piece of political flattery. His most famous early play was called The Arraignment of Paris, and the plot is straight out of Greek mythology. There's a golden apple, it's offered to the fairest goddess, and that sparks a huge argument between Juno, Pallas, and Venus. And this line, it just perfectly shows off Peele's skill with words. You've got the goddess Venus making her case with this gorgeous lyrical verse, basically arguing the apple has to be hers because her name means beauty. The language is elegant, it's musical, it's just perfectly designed for the royal court. But here's where the play gets really clever. Paris, the judge, he gets accused of being biased, so the whole case gets appealed to the highest court of the gods. And their final verdict? Well, they completely sidestep the bickering goddesses and give the apple to a humble nymph named Eliza. So who was this mysterious Eliza? Oh, everyone in the court knew exactly who he was talking about. It was a thinly veiled and incredibly smart tribute to Queen Elizabeth I, who was sitting right there in the audience. Peele was basically saying that not even a goddess could compare to the fairness of England's queen. I mean, what a masterful piece of flattery. But here's the thing, was Peele's own life as polished and courtly as his poetry? No way, not even close. This is where the story takes a really sharp and much darker turn. It's like there were two different George Peeles living in one body. On one hand, you have the Oxford scholar, the master poet, celebrated by the Queen herself. But on the other hand, you have this guy with a reputation for a dissolute, reckless life, someone who was constantly scrambling for money and living right on the edge. I mean, his reputation was so bad that his own friend and fellow wit, Robert Greene, publicly begged him to change his ways. Greene's phrase, driven to extreme shifts for a living, just paints this incredibly vivid picture of a life filled with poverty, desperation, and probably some pretty sketchy deals. And when you look at the timeline of his life, you can really see this tragic arc play out. It starts with all the promise of Oxford, rises to professional success in London, and then it just crashes. He died at only 40 years old, broke, and according to one account from the time, from syphilis. Just a grim, grim end for such a brilliant talent. And yet, despite that scandalous life, his talent was just undeniable. So undeniable, in fact, that his name is now permanently linked with the greatest playwright of all time. And this is maybe the most fascinating part of Peele's entire legacy. Get this, modern scholarship, all the textual analysis, it strongly points to George Peele being a co-author on one of William Shakespeare's very first plays, and it happens to be his bloodiest tragedy, Titus Andronicus. And the evidence for this? It's pretty compelling. For starters, Peele had a well-known taste for gore in his own plays, which Titus has in spades. Then there's detailed metrical analysis. That's the study of the rhythm of the verse, and it points directly to his unique style in the opening acts. Plus, you have to remember,
Collaboration back then was totally normal. It wasn't the exception. And his peers, guys like Greene, saw him as an equal to giants like Christopher Marlowe.
So yeah, his life ended in ruin and scandal. But his poetry tells a completely different story. It's one of profound beauty, a deep sense of duty, and this unwavering devotion.
Late in his life, Peele wrote this incredibly beautiful poem called A Farewell to Arms. It was for an aging knight who was retiring from the Queen's service. And it's this poignant reflection on getting older. He's saying, yeah, things like beauty and strength, they're like flowers that fade, but the real virtues, duty, faith, love, those are the roots that last forever.
And the poem ends with this just powerful declaration. Even though the knight is leaving the glamour of the court for a simple cottage, his loyalty to his saint, the queen, is still perfect and unwavering. You can't help but feel it's personal, maybe reflecting Peele's own loyalty, even as his own life was falling apart. And that really gets to the heart of it all, doesn't it? George Peele was considered rare by the people who knew him. He worked with Shakespeare, he was a pioneer of English drama. And yet, for centuries, he was basically forgotten, completely overshadowed by the giant he helped create. It just leaves you with this fascinating question. If a talent like his could fall through the cracks of history, who else is out there, just waiting for us to find them?